The ice queen of our school asked me to pretend to be her boyfriend. Everyone at Northbridge Academy knew three things about Vivienne Ashford. She was untouchable, she was brilliant, and she would destroy you if you got in her way. I knew a fourth thing. She was standing in front of my locker at 7:42 a.m. on a Tuesday, and that meant my day was about to get complicated. Hayden Cross, she said, my name clipped and precise, in that way that made teachers love her and students fear her. I need something from you. I adjusted my headphones around my neck and tried to look less startled than I felt. Vivienne Ashford didn't need things from people like me. Scholarship students who kept their heads down and their grades just high enough to maintain their funding. Good morning to you too, I said, reaching past her for my locker combination. She didn't move. I need you to pretend to be my boyfriend for the next 2 weeks. My hand froze on the lock. I'm sorry, what? You heard me. She crossed her arms, somehow making our school's burgundy blazer look like haute couture. 2 weeks. Public appearances at school, one formal event this Saturday. In exchange, I'll ensure your scholarship is renewed for senior year without the usual complications. My stomach dropped. She knew. Of course she knew. Vivienne sat on the student advisory board, and her father was on the board of trustees. Why me? I managed. Those ice blue eyes assessed me like I was a problem to be solved. Because you're invisible enough that people will wonder, but competent enough that they'll believe it. And because, she paused, something almost vulnerable flickering across her face, you're one of 3 people in this school who's never tried to use me for social advancement. I thought about my mom's extra shifts at the hospital, about the scholarship essay I'd have to write if I lost funding, about the way Vivienne's hand trembled slightly against her pressed sleeve. 2 weeks, I said, and you're buying lunch for the duration. The smallest smile ghosted across her lips. Deal. The rumor started before second period. Vivienne's strategy was brutally efficient. She'd linked her fingers through mine the moment we left the locker bay, her palm cool and dry. When I tried to pull away, she'd squeeze tighter. Commit to the role, or the performance fails, she'd whispered. Now we sat in the cafeteria at the center table, watching our classmates try not to stare while absolutely staring. You're doing that thing again, Vivienne said, not looking up from her salad. What thing? That hunted animal thing, where you calculate exit routes. She speared a tomato with surgical precision. Relax. Easy for you to say. You're the apex predator in this ecosystem. She looked up then, one eyebrow arched. Did you just compare our school to a nature documentary? I contain multitudes, I said, stealing one of her cherry tomatoes. Her fork paused. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. A real laugh, not the polite sound she used in class presentations. Several heads turned. You're weird, Hayden Cross. You're the one who proposed this elaborate scheme. What's it for anyway? The shutters came down over her expression. Something like that. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Nice upgrade, Cross. Didn't know charity cases came with benefits packages now. 3 more followed in quick succession. All crude variations on the same theme. Vivienne reached across and read them, her jaw tightening. How many? Just started. It's fine. It's not fine. She was typing rapidly on her own phone. This is exactly what I was trying to avoid. Who's sending these? She hesitated. My former friends. When I cut ties with them last semester, they didn't take it well. I got tired of the constant games, the competition disguised as friendship, the way everything was currency to be traded. So I stopped playing. And they saw that as a betrayal. They saw it as weakness. An opening. She set down her fork with deliberate care. The Ice Queen isn't supposed to have feelings. She's not supposed to get tired of being used or walk away from the game. I looked around the cafeteria with new eyes, noticing the small clusters of students who kept glancing our way. The girl with the designer bag, the guy from debate team, They all wore the same expression: hungry, waiting. So this whole boyfriend thing, I said slowly, it's not about getting someone back. It's about keeping people out. My mother is hosting a fundraiser gala on Saturday. The same people who've been circling like sharks will be there. They'll spend the entire evening trying to find cracks in my armor, trying to prove I made a mistake cutting them loose. She met my eyes. I need them to see that I've moved on, that I'm fine. That's a lot of pressure to put on a fake relationship. That's why I chose carefully. Something almost soft entered her expression. You don't want anything from me, Hayden. That makes you either the smartest person in this school or the most oblivious. I'm going with oblivious. It's more on brand. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo. Me and Vivienne at my locker that morning, with a caption, 2 weeks max before she gets bored. They're keeping track, I said. Of course they are. This is a social experiment to them. She stood abruptly. Come on. If we're gonna make this convincing, we need to establish actual chemistry. The roof. It's the only place people aren't watching. The roof was technically off limits, but Vivienne produced a key without explanation. We emerged into pale autumn sunlight, the city sprawling beyond the school's iron fence. Better, she said, breathing deeply. We need to practice being comfortable with each other. Right now you flinch every time I take your hand. She stepped closer. May I? At my nod, she took both my hands, examining them. You have nice hands, artist's hands. She placed one on her waist, kept the other clasped in hers. Basic slow dance position. We'll need it for Saturday. You're very tactical about this. I'm tactical about everything. It's how I survive. She began swaying slightly, and I followed her lead. Can I ask you something? Why did you say yes? The scholarship excuse is practical, but you could have fought that on your own. The question caught me off guard. Honestly, you looked scared. Just for a second. The great Vivienne Ashford actually worried I might say no. I met her eyes. Nobody should have to look like that when asking for help. She stopped moving. That's unexpectedly kind. Don't spread it around. I have a reputation as a mediocre cynic to maintain. Your secret's safe with me. Something had shifted between us. Thank you, Hayden, for being exactly who you are instead of who you think I want you to be. We spent the next hour talking. I learned she wanted to study architecture, that she'd taught herself piano from YouTube, that she hated mint but loved the smell. She learned about my photography obsession, my dad's old camera, my encyclopedic knowledge of Douglas Adams. When we returned to class, I deleted 17 new messages without reading them. Over the next few days, the performance and reality started bleeding together. We studied in the library. I waited after her student council meetings. She came to the darkroom to watch me develop photos. And somewhere in all of it, I started noticing things. The way she added exactly 2 sugars to her black coffee when she thought no one watched. How she twisted her silver ring when anxious. The way her Ice Queen persona melted when she helped a lost freshman find the science labs. Saturday arrived too quickly. Vivienne's driver picked me up at 7. She was already in the car, transformed. The ice blue dress matched her eyes, her dark hair swept up. She looked untouchable again. You look beautiful, I said. You clean up adequately, she replied, but her cheeks flushed. She handed me a small box. We need to look coordinated. Inside were cufflinks engraved with my initials. Vivienne, these are on loan. My mother notices details, but they had my initials, not generic rentals. The Ashford estate was intimidating. Sprawling gardens, classical architecture, crystal chandeliers. The fundraiser guests looked more interested in being seen than the actual cause. Vivienne's hand found mine immediately, her grip tight. Remember, she whispered, we're happy, naturally affectionate. I'm obviously smitten with you. Her mother descended immediately, an older, sharper version of Vivienne. Vivienne, darling. And this must be Hayden. How unexpected. Before the interrogation could deepen, A new voice interrupted. Vivienne! There you are. The girl approaching was all warm colors and easy smiles, surrounded by a perfectly coordinated entourage. But her eyes were calculating. Deanna, Vivienne said, her hand tightening on mine. I didn't know you'd be here. Mother's on the committee. You know how it is. Deanna's smile sharpened. And who's this? This is Hayden, my boyfriend. Hayden, this is Diana Westbrook. We used to be friends. The temperature dropped 20 degrees. Boyfriend, Diana repeated. How unexpected. You swore off dating after last time. People change, Vivienne said. Do they? Diana turned to me. Tell me, Hayden, how did you two meet? Chemistry lab. She asked to borrow my notes. Vivienne asked to borrow notes. Diana caught herself. From someone outside her usual circle? Her usual circle had terrible handwriting, I said pleasantly, and a tendency to prioritize social hierarchy over actual learning. I can see why she upgraded. One of Diana's friends made a strangled laugh. Diana's smile froze. How charming. Tell me, does he know about? He knows everything that matters, Vivienne interrupted. Now if you'll excuse us. We escaped to the garden, Vivienne's breathing carefully controlled. That was Diana, my former best friend, the one who started the betting pool. Betting pool? Last semester, Diana started a pool betting on who could get me to crack first, to show emotion, to mess up my perfect image. They thought it was hilarious, a game. She wrapped her arms around herself. I found out when I walked in on them comparing notes. Literally comparing notes on my behaviors, my vulnerabilities. Like I was a lab experiment. I shrugged off my jacket and draped it over her shoulders. They don't deserve you. Any of them. You're brilliant and fierce and kind when you think no one's watching. The fact that they turn those things into weaknesses says everything about them and nothing about you. She looked up at me. How are you real? Extensive therapy and a mother who doesn't tolerate bullshit. She laughed, then stepped closer and rested her forehead against my shoulder. I wrapped my arms around her, and we stood like that while the party continued without us. When we pulled apart, Diana was watching from the terrace. She's going to test us, Vivienne murmured. Let her try. We returned united, and Diana worked systematically. She separated us, asked pointed questions to catch contradictions, created situations to make me uncomfortable. But she'd miscalculated. When she accidentally spilled wine near me, I caught the glass and thanked her for the reflex training. When she asked about our timeline, I answered with specific truths. The rooftop conversations. The way Vivienne twisted her ring when nervous. When she tried to embarrass me about my modest background, I smiled and talked about my mother saving children's lives. Vivienne watched it all with something like wonder. Around midnight, Diana cornered us near the champagne fountain. I have to admit, you're better at this than I expected. Almost makes me believe it's real. It is real, I said. Is it? Or is this just another one of Vivienne's calculations? Diana turned to Vivienne. You're good at manipulation, but even you can't fake genuine connection. And when this falls apart, when he figures out he's just another piece on your chessboard, we'll be here. You were never my friends, Vivienne said, steady and clear. Friends don't treat each other like experiments. They don't keep score of vulnerabilities or start betting pools about breaking points. You taught me that the hard way. You'll be lonely, Diana said, uncertain now. Maybe, but I'd rather be lonely than surrounded by people who see me as a game to win. Vivienne took my hand. Now, if you'll excuse us, I'd like to dance with my boyfriend. We escaped to the dance floor, and Vivienne fit against me perfectly. The string quartet played something slow and melancholy. That was brave, I said quietly. That was terrifying. She looked up at me. What if she's right? What if I am just using you? Then explain this. I touched her cheek gently. Explain why your hands are shaking. Why you smiled when I talked about my mom. Why you bought me cufflinks with my initials instead of renting generic ones. Those were practical. They were thoughtful. There's a difference? I took a breath. And explain why I can't stop thinking about you. Why I've memorized your coffee order and the way you laugh when you're actually happy. Why the idea of this ending in 2 weeks makes me feel like I'm losing something real. She stopped dancing. Around us, other couples continued, but we stood frozen. Hayden, she whispered. This was supposed to be fake. I know. We agreed. No romantic entanglements. I know. You're gonna ruin everything. I know. I'm really sorry about that. And then she kissed me. It wasn't like movies. No dramatic music swell. We were surrounded by people who'd spent all evening trying to prove we were fake. But none of that mattered, because Vivienne was kissing me like I was air, and she'd been drowning. When we broke apart, her eyes were wide with panic. That wasn't part of the agreement, she said. No, that was completely off script. Hayden, I don't know how to do this. The real thing. I don't know how to be vulnerable without calculating all the angles. Then we'll figure out together. Badly. With mistakes and awkward conversations. That sounds terrible. It sounds real. She laughed. Relief and terror and hope tangled together. 2 weeks. We still have 2 weeks in our agreement. Let's see where this goes. No pressure. Just 2 people figuring out if something fake can become something real. I can work with that. We resumed dancing, and this time it felt different. Less performance, more promise. Monday morning, I found my locker covered in sticky notes. Most were supportive, some crude, a few calculating. I was pulling them down when Vivienne appeared with 2 coffee cups. Black coffee, 2 sugars, she said. I know you know I take sugar. Photographer, observant is kind of my thing. She helped with the sticky notes. We're officially school gossip. Diana texted me 17 times yesterday. I blocked her number. Should have done it months ago. How do you feel about that? Lighter. Still scared, but lighter. She smiled, like I've been carrying other people's expectations and I finally put them down. We walked to first period, and I noticed the difference. Before, Vivienne had moved with rigid perfection. Now she still had that elegance, but softer, more human. Can I ask you something? I said at her classroom. What happens at the end of 2 weeks? I was thinking we could renegotiate, make it 3 weeks, or 4, or possibly indefinite, depending on how things go. Very tactical of you. I contain multitudes. She smiled, echoing my words from that first day. Besides, you still owe me several lunches. She kissed my cheek before disappearing into class. At lunch, we claimed our usual table. But this time, others joined. Maya from photography club, James from chemistry, a sophomore named Ravi. Vivienne made space, asked questions, genuinely interested. The ice queen continued to thaw. That afternoon, I found a note in my locker. Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for being patient. Thank you for seeing me. I know we agreed on 2 weeks, but I'm hoping for much longer. Possibly years. Possibly forever, if I'm being honest. Which apparently you inspire me to be. This wasn't supposed to happen. You were supposed to be a convenient solution. Instead, you became the person I want to talk to about everything. I don't know how to do this without strategy and calculation, but I'm willing to try if you are. Yours terrifyingly, thrillingly, genuinely, V. I texted her, years sounds good. Forever sounds even better. Let's start with today and see where we end up. Her response was immediate. That's the least tactical thing I've ever heard. I love it. 2 weeks later, we were still together. 4 weeks after that, still going strong. By winter formal, we'd stopped counting. Diana and her circle moved on to other targets. Vivienne's mother remained skeptical, but couldn't argue with her daughter's happiness. My scholarship was renewed without issue. We had our first real fight 3 months in. about attending a party thrown by Vivienne's former circle. I said we should prove we weren't hiding. She said we didn't owe them anything. We figured it out in the end like we figured out everything. Together, messily, honestly. On our 6-month anniversary, Vivienne gave me a professional camera with a note, "For capturing real moments, no more performances." I gave her a silver necklace with a tiny ice crystal pendant. "For the ice queen who taught me the cold and kind aren't contradictions." She cried, then laughed at herself for crying. Then kissed me and said, I was ruining her carefully constructed image. "Good," I said. "You don't need it anymore." "No," she agreed. "I really don't." Somewhere in Northbridge Academy's complicated social hierarchy, 2 people who'd started out faking it found something real. Something that didn't require strategy or performance. Just honesty, patience, and the willingness to let someone see past the armor. The Ice Queen melted. But what emerged was better than ice. It was warmth and genuine connection. Terrifying and thrilling and absolutely real. It all started with a simple question at my locker on a Tuesday morning, and my decision to say yes to someone who looked, just for a moment, genuinely scared. Best decision I ever made.